Hi everybody, I'm Prue Ashby, Head of Sustainability at London and Partners. I'm going to be moderating this session today. Hang on a minute, got some technical things going on. Are you all right? Okay. A session on the startup journey to success, case studies and best practice. This panel will be looking at the 10 biggest challenges that cause startups in this sector to fail, with speakers drawn from across the startup, scale-up ecosystem and the investment community. We will be looking at what works and what doesn't work in the transition to net zero. We'll explore the strategies and best practice that startups and scale-ups can adopt to be successful, and investors need to help the sector perform for people, planet and profits. Right, I'm going to introduce the panelists. So firstly, next to me is Ezequiel Vedana, who is the founder and CEO of PP. They are an award-winning solution to save water in toilets. He is also a future leader on the ReGen 24 program. He's a UN Young Leader for Sustainable Development Goals, an ambassador for One Young World, and he started entrepreneurship 20 years ago at the age of 16. And in fact, it's his birthday today. Happy birthday.
Congratulations.
Next, we have Aidan O'Sullivan, who is the co-founder and CTO of Carbon Re. It's an industrial AI company spin-out from Cambridge University and UCL. Its software pushes boundaries of AI, unlocking potential for data to achieve previous out-of-reach fuel efficiencies. He's an associate professor in energy and AI at UCL. He's a Turing Fellow, and his company's raised £10 million. Next, we have Tom White, the CEO of Sea Capture. It's an award-winning solvent technology capturing CO2 from waste gas, preventing it from going into the atmosphere. It's a spin-out from the University of Leeds. Then we have Martin Tantow, who's a partner with Pegasus Tech Ventures. He's got 25 years experience as a startup founder, VC investor, corporate innovation leader and management consultant. He's co-founded many venture-backed startups and had 3 exits. Pegasus Ventures is based in Silicon Valley with over $2.5 billion in assets under management, and Martin's focus is on US and European deals. Finally, Dr. Boris Breiner, who is Chief Scientific Officer and co-founder of Lambda Agri. It's an award-winning agri-tech company that has developed a light-changing spray coating for greenhouse panels that can increase crop yields by 20%, and he has a scientific background. So just by way of introduction to the panel and setting the scene, I've been working with London and Partners for many years and worked with many startups and scale-ups. In fact, I worked with Twitter, Uber, Airbnb and Tesla when they were very, very first expanding out of the US market. And they looked around the world and decided to come and set up their first global offices in London, and I helped them do that. Also, London and Partners over many years has worked with London and UK scale-ups in helping them go global. In fact, we work with 300 a year, and if any of you in the audience are based in London and want to join any of our support programs, or you're based overseas and exploring London, please let us know and we can provide our free support. London's tech cluster is the biggest in Europe. And in fact, London's climate tech companies raised $3.5 billion in VC investment in 2023, making London the second biggest climate tech hub in the world, following Stockholm. However, all this think about successful startups and scale-ups is not all the real story. Harvard, late 2023, published a report that said 75% of venture-backed startups fail. They cited reasons such as running out of cash, problems in the team, shortcomings with product development and business model, getting out-competed, lack of market need, or changing circumstances. What we're going to focus on today is what are the conditions to create success for startups and scale-ups. We're going to hear from the panelists on their really amazing experiences and lessons learned and their strategies for success. So I'll go over to the panel now. The first question I'd like to ask each one of them is to summarize their journey in terms of entrepreneurship and a bit more about the current company that they're working on and what that's about. So I'll start with you, Ezequiel.
So thank you very much for having me here. It's a real pleasure, and good morning all. So I'm from Brazil. As Bruce said, I am doing 36 years old today. So it's my birthday today, and I'm celebrating my birthday. And also for me, it's a pleasure to be here in London, sharing a little bit about our history. I started when I was 16 years old. My first business was a graphic design company. But everything changed in 2010. It was a very specific year for me. I was doing a lot of things at the same moment, but it was a real moment that, okay, I'm doing, because I am a musician, I am an entrepreneur, you know, I was engaged with the wish to marry, I was studying international business at university, so it was a lot of things at the same time, and it was, okay, what should I do, you know, like, for real? And it was quite a challenge for me to get that answer. So I decided to take a moment, you know, like an introspective moment to search for this purpose and for this meaning, for my vocation and what should I do with my life, etc. And after 4 days with fasting, I decided to do a fasting to get like very focused on discover the answer. I just woke up in the morning with a question. So, like in the middle of a dream or something, I just wake up and I say in loud voice, like, why we spend so much water when we pee? And that was quite crazy, you know, because, yes, very crazy actually. But, but the point is that question just led me to the company that I have today. So today we have developed a solution to save water in toilets. I don't know if you all know about it, but usually, on average, 40% of the daily consumption of water in any city in the world is just for toilets. São Paulo, for example, 42% of the daily consumption of water is just for toilets. So it's like more than 25 million people, you know, using almost the half of water supply just for pee on the water. So this makes no sense, and this is the problem that we are trying to solve. So we developed a solution that is a biodegradable additive that works specifics on urine. That's why my company is called PP, because it works specifics on urine. So it's like a substitute for the flush. So every time that you go in the toilet to pee, instead using the flush and wasting like 8-10 liters of water each time, it's just 1 ml for this solution that we developed. We are using natural extracts, biodegradable components, also nanotechnology to do all this process. And also by the end of the day, it's even cheaper than the water. So you can save water and money at the same time. You just go and can spray like a hand spray, something like that, or even a device that you can put like in public places like this, for example. So basically, this is what I am doing for the last 12, 13 years of my life. Today, I am living in Paris for 1 year. We have been invited by the city of Paris to open the company in Paris to start the European, you know, business as well. So we started in Brazil. Today we have more than 4,000 clients. 200,000 people are using our solution every day. We have distribution in Chile. We are going to Mexico. And yes, Europe is the next step for us. So yes, I'll be glad to share a little bit more later. Thank you so much.
Great, and hopefully you'll have an office in London as well.
Thank you. We can discuss.
Aidan.
Thanks, Brew. I guess it's kind of strange to look back. Usually in a startup, you're always looking forwards and always trying to think about what's coming next. So to kind of look back at the journey is a kind of surreal experience or surreal kind of exercise. I guess my background is in research, so I'm a scientist. I've been researching AI for the last kind of 10, 12, 15 years since my PhD. But I guess I started with entrepreneurship, or the first kind of encounter with that was at MIT in the civil engineering department I was working in, where a professor spun out a company overnight. It was called Newtonomy. They were working on autonomous vehicles, and they raised something like 500 million in the end as kind of their total kind of raise overall. They're based in Singapore, but that was a real kind of eye-opening moment because it showed how you go from just doing the research to actually implementing it in progress. And I think the AI community is the type of people where you actually have to deploy your work to show that it works. Again, writing papers, you can kind of do that often enough, but to actually go and demonstrate the work that you have, it's important that you can actually deploy it in the real world. So that kind of became an idea that I had, and then I came to London and I set up my own lab at UCL, where I was working on climate and AI for the last kind of 8 years, and it seemed like a lot of the solutions I was seeing in the space, it was great. I was training students and they're going to work in these companies, but they were mostly focused on things like carbon trading, carbon credits, satellite imagery to monitor emissions, and no one was actually looking at like where are the emissions coming from and what can we do about it. So I really wanted to do something that focused on the real large sources of emissions. I was kind of put off about personal carbon footprints. It seems very like high complexity, low impact. And what I wanted to find was problems that were high impact, low complexity, or what I thought were low complexity. And that led me to the hard to abate sectors, the heavy industry sectors, cement and steel, which are responsible for about 15% of global emissions. And there's only 3,000 cement plants in the world and 600 steel plants. So again, it seems like if you can have an impact at 10, 15, 20 of those, you can have much more impact than kind of more distributed kind of solutions. So I started talking to UCL Business, my colleague at Cambridge Ventures. We also started to talk to them in the Institute for Manufacturing. We talked about what AI could do and what were the problems in the cement industry that meant they used more energy than they needed to. Again, these are industries that burn coal. While the power sector has been really good at phasing out coal, the hard to abate sectors like materials manufacture have been really bad because they need these high temperatures. So when we looked at what they were doing, we could see that the control structures that they were working on were really outdated. Their technology from the 70s. AI has advanced way beyond those capabilities. So we wanted to see if we could go into a plant and deploy this technology and see the impact that it had. And as part of that, we did a couple of fundraisers. So we started out with a pre-seed round with UCL and Cambridge and Clean Growth Fund, who are here as well today. And that was very much showing them the idea, showing them the prototype that I kind of built, hacked together during COVID by myself in my room, and then going from there to build a team of AI scientists to take that and deploy. And some of the steps along the way were crazy. We worked with a plant in India who were emailing us data every day, and I would get up at 5 a.m. and run the algorithm, send them back their results. And now we have a full system where we're streaming live data from a plant in real time at second by second. So again, at every step of the way, our kind of integration with the plant has gone further and further. But we're now at a team of kind of 20 people working with 5 cement plants around the world, and doing so autonomously in real time. And we've pushed to the stage where we're taking direct control of some of the subsystems in the plant. So it's been quite a crazy journey so far, and at every step of the way there's been kind of problems you wouldn't expect. But building a great team is kind of the real key solution, because people will take on those problems and come up with solutions that you wouldn't have expected.
Thank you, Aidan. That's a great story there. Tom.
Hi, Brew. Thank you very much indeed for inviting us to the stage today. So I'm a chemical process engineer, but before I did that, I was a soldier. But I always want my epiphany, I think, was when I was 16. I knew the world was going to have problems with the economy, the environment, and energy, and I wanted to be in the crux of that. So, although the military has a part of that, I'd rather not go. I don't think that's the solution for where we're here today. So, graduated from UCL with a chemical engineering degree, and my first job was for an Indian startup who were going to put DuPont out of business. They'd found a brand new way of making nylon in 3 rather than 7 steps with a much lower carbon footprint. And after 18 months of working with them, looking at their pilot plant, we realised that actually the reaction was too slow. We needed to take the unused reactants back to the beginning, and that recycle loop was actually the size of the River Nile, and it just was not a commercial enterprise. So unless we were willing to find investors with a really long-term view to improve the catalysis of that process, that process was going to get put on the shelf. So it was put on the shelf. It was bought by a very large organisation, and it's still on their shelf. I think it's there to avoid the competition for their current project, but that's another story. And that is a real threat to some startups being taken away and put on a shelf. Then moved to the opposite end of the spectrum. Joined a very large international engineering companies on large international construction projects in the Middle East, in America, in Asia. So at one point had an opportunity to work on carbon capture and storage in the clean coal movement back in the late noughties. So having spent 10 years in the Middle East, an opportunity to come back to the UK, come back to startup life, and back to carbon capture and storage arose, and the rest is history. So I joined Sea Capture in 2020, and Sea Capture have developed a new liquid absorbent for capturing carbon dioxide in flue gas streams from point source industrial emissions. And our chemistry is extremely robust. So it's a great application for cement, steel, glass, waste to energy. They've got really high contaminants that current techniques really don't work very well for. It uses about 40% less energy, so it's a huge saving in terms of cost, because the cost of carbon capture is driven very much by its energy, and also the liquid that we use is effectively has a very, very low toxicity, which is one of the biggest problems of carbon capture. We use a very toxic chemical that, and fugitive emissions are a real issue. So, a real passion for science, engineering, energy and the environment. A few failures on my belt. You learn a lot more from failures than you do from successes. And Sea Capture's on our journey.
Great, and it's interesting that at the age of 16, that's what you kind of wanted to do. So, Martin.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here. So Martin Tantow, I'm a partner with Pegasus Tech Ventures. I'm kind of a entrepreneur turned investor. I founded my first company 25 years ago, 1999. Was called a WAP portal for mobile phones. Long time ago. Don't worry about it too much anymore. In fact, we actually came and into that bubble burst, and the company was gone. We can talk about failures later, if you wanna hear more about how what my learnings were all about that. I founded a couple of more companies then. One that actually did make it, called 3Scale, an API management solution that I found in 2007, sold 9 years later to Red Hat, which then got bought by IBM. That kind of was my turning point or switching point from entrepreneur, still an entrepreneur at heart, and actually working with a lot of companies, startups at the moment, but turned over to the investment side. I then first built my own fund, Blicity Ventures. I've done a couple of investments, 14 investments actually, through Blicity, and then later on joined Pegasus Tech Ventures. A little bit about Pegasus. So we have $2.5 billion in assets under management. We've invested in over 260 companies over the last 10 years, so quite a bit. We do like an investment now every two weeks about. Company is headquartered in Silicon Valley, but I'm based in Europe. And we invest globally, most prominently in North America and Asia, and now increasingly also in Europe. In fact, we have actually done some investment in clean tech in Europe, actually in the UK, two of them as well. Can talk about a little bit more about them later. And here we are. And by the way, what we also do, we do a pitch competition called Startup World Cup. And we organize it with the founder of Startup World Cup. And it's actually going to be on the next stage, I think, right next to, I think at 2:30 today. So if you're interested, that's kind of our outreach to the local ecosystem. We're trying to find the winner of this pitching contest, and then we're going to send them to Silicon Valley to pitch for a $1 million investment prize. So not now, don't leave now, but at 2:30, that's on the next stage.
And Martin, just a quick question on that. Can companies still pitch, or it's the pitching slots are all taken up?
No, I haven't been part of the selection process. Just going to be at the final one. I think this is all done. So I think pitching is already going on, but the application for sure is over.
Yeah. Okay.
For this one, But we're actually doing this in over 50 countries, cities, and regions across the world, and we're by far not done. In fact, the grand finale, that's where we, from the top 10, finding out the one that wins the $1 million investment prize, that's in October. So even if you're not here in London, you might be able to get in somewhere else. And all the information is on the website, where we're going to be and when.
Right. And Boris.
Well, hi, thank you for having me. And yeah, I'm the odd one out. I never wanted to be here. I never wanted to do anything with business. I'm a scientist. I started out as an undergraduate, University of Heidelberg, went to the States for my PhD, found out I really enjoy the science, and especially if I can do things in science that have an application, things that shows use, not just the pure stuff that ends up in a textbook. So great. So what does one do? One goes to MIT afterwards as a postdoc, and I was spectacularly unsuccessful there. Not only in terms of science, but also in terms of getting money. So I had to find employment elsewhere, and I ended up at the University of Cambridge, always thinking that, okay, a little bit longer, I'll get my academic position, and I'll be a professor, and that'll be it. And as it turns out, there's more to it than just doing good science. The luck factor, the connections factor, all of that just didn't work out for me. And so more or less as a stopgap, I kind of slid into the startup world as an employee in a previous job. And I learned a few very good things about what are the right things to do in a startup. I learned even more about what not to do in that particular startup, as that startup doesn't exist anymore. One of the best things that came out of it is I met a physicist, a lady with a PhD in physics by the name of Monica. And well, like I said, that startup failed, and I think it was almost 24 hours after I got laid off, I got contacted by Monica saying, hey, I heard you got laid off and that the company is folding. Like, yeah, so? Like, well, there's this idea. Yeah, well, the idea was to change light. I'm a photochemist by trade, that is, light interacting with matter. We have this idea on how to make solar panels better. And what we would do is we would take short wavelength light, turn it into long wavelength light, which would be better for the solar panel. And wouldn't you be interested in helping us along? We need a chemist. I'm like, you know what? Tell me more. I had time. I was out of a job, so talked to her, talked to some of the other folks that she had standing at the ready. And yeah, the rest, as they say, is history, right? So we tried for a while to make this work with solar panels. And as it turns out, now I'm a lab person in terms of going elsewhere to raise funds and whatever. I've always left that to people with, like, we got Niall, who has a banking background. He's perfect for this sort of stuff. And at some point, he and Monica went to the Judge Business School in Cambridge. And a gentleman there is like, does it actually occur to you that this changing the light from short wavelength to long wavelength works for plants as well? We're like, excuse me? It's like, yeah, actually, if you take short wavelength light, turn that into a long wavelength light, it makes plants happier, or at least more productive. Like, okay, tell us more. So we started looking into this, and about a couple, 3 years ago now, we decided, yeah, we should shift the focus of the company, because it turns out for solar panels, people are really touchy about letting you do stuff to them. They're assets that they are planning on using for many years, so any alternation, I should say, will potentially void the arrangement that they have with the people that pay them feed-in tariffs and so forth. So they don't really like that idea very much. So let's try plants. Plants might be easier. And as it turns out, yeah, it works. We're not the only ones to do that, by the way, but we're the ones that do it in such a way that people can actually afford it. Meaning that if we do have competitors out there, but if they charge 30 pounds per square meter to treat a greenhouse, then well, we're looking at many times less than that, and that makes it affordable. And how does it work? In this case, we take UV light, which the plants don't need once the pollination stage is over. We convert that into red light, and it has two effects. Number one, the photosynthetic turnover is higher. Means there is a general higher amount of things happening with a long wavelength photon. And the second one is it has a signaling effect. Towards the end of the growing season, when it's time for, let's say, the strawberries to say, hey, let's put the effort into growing strawberries rather than growing the plant itself, that's when red light is more prominent, so you trick the plant into producing more fruit. And that is what we do. And we started out with field trials last year. We had trials at Cranfield University where we have coated greenhouses with a Screwfix brand spray gun, so all very high-tech and very sophisticated. That just shows that it's a very robust technology. Sprayed this stuff, and as it turns out, for basil, that was our test crop, it worked rather well. We got something like 10% extra out of the basil plants. For this year, we've got much, much bigger plants. We tried with a variety of crops, from tomatoes to strawberries to mint to coriander. And I think it's about 3,000 square meters that we're going to have this summer. And watch this space. Hopefully something good will come of it. Actually, I'm quite certain something good will come of it.
Thank you, Boris. Thanks for giving that whole story. So now we're going to go to sort of the real crux of this sort of session, really, which is about lessons learned from failures and successes. This can be around the fundraising experiences, business models, trusting people, advice, ecosystem support, all sorts of things that can impact success or failure. So I'm actually going to start with Aidan for this one, change it around a bit.
Sure.
You raised £10 million, so that's a success. Do you want to talk us through what you did to do that, what made that successful, but then also touch on the failures around it?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, there was a lot of no's along that journey as well. So I think in terms of experience in fundraising, we've spoken to a lot of VCs. We pitched quite a few in order to kind of get the one or two successes that we've had. So in terms of the experience of doing that, it's very different. There's very few things in life that are quite like that. Again, like writing a research grant is very, very different, and how you approach it takes a while to kind of develop the muscle memory or the kind of skill of doing it. And I think from what I understand, from what I've learned, there was a huge step forward from going from pre-seed to seed in terms of the level of investor kind of investigation and level of investor technical depth that we kind of experienced, and that was a real learning for us as we started fundraising the second time. I think the first time with the pre-seed rounds, what I kind of understood from the discussions was that people didn't expect you to have all the answers, but they wanted to get a sense of you were easy to work with, and that you could be amenable to discussions, and that you'd be honest about what you were in the dark about. That was very important. I think if you kind of go in there very, very bolshy and try and say, I know everything, we're going to save the planet, we're going to do all this, it's going to be great, I think you'll kind of be slowly eased out the room. I think the experience of kind of identifying the things that you don't know and what you have to do to figure those out, that is where it becomes more of a collaboration. And I think you kind of don't want it to be just you give me the money and I go do the thing. You want it very much to be, let's kind of get involved in this, and what can you guys contribute, and how well do you know the area? So making it more of a conversation and a collaboration with your investors who are going to sit on your board, and they're going to have a very important say in what you do as a company is really important. And if you try and think of it as a different kind of relationship, it's not going to go too well. I think the experience of going to seed rounds, that became more challenging, and again we did quite a big seed round led by Planet A Ventures, who are a recent enough climate fund based in Germany, and for them it was about the scale of the impact that we could have. I think that was what most excited them about what we were doing. So again, at every stage you have to have different levels of proof. I would always say go in with something, don't go in with just an idea, even a pre-seed stage. So we had a prototype, we had data, we had kind of information about how things worked through working with someone in Canada for free, essentially. Like, we didn't charge anything, we just wanted to get the information and go out there and do it. And you have to kind of hustle around a bit when you're starting out. And then from there we actually got a contract with somebody to work with them full-time, build out the team, and then we were able to show results from that trial in India, which is not an easy place to kind of do technology. There's a lot of challenges and a lot of learnings, but again, you have to be very, very open about that. So we're working in the industrial sector, we're working with cement plants, steel plants, we're working with IoT, so people understand that is a very hostile environment to artificial intelligence. So taking those learnings and sharing them with investors as you went along meant that the conversations were more open, more honest. They weren't always successful, but it meant when we did find an investor, we found the right one. So that's really important as well. You want somebody who's there for the long-term vision, is there kind of to back you when things don't go so well, and isn't going to panic when you lose a customer or when the results aren't what you expected in theory. So again, building that kind of long-term relationship with an investor and seeing them as more of a partner rather than just a funder is really important. And I think, again, as an academic, often when you want to pitch research funding, you want to say, this is a really interesting problem, give me a lot of money and I'll go research this for 5 years and maybe something will come out. That's a terrible idea. Don't do that with investors. That's like the worst thing you could possibly do. You want to be kind of going in and saying, these are the problems we can solve to build towards this vision, and this is how we'll be profitable along the way. Talking about big problems and kind of talking about kind of very open-ended research questions isn't so great in terms of even within deep tech, we found.
Thanks, Aidan. So having a very sort of honest relationship with the investor, not being arrogant, and basically being transparent about what your product can do and what stage you're at.
Yeah, I think the best skill to have is to be easy to work with, and that kind of translates into VC as well.
While we're on that subject, Martin, you've raised money as an entrepreneur, but also now you're an investor. What do you look for in a scale up, and what sort of success and failures have you had on that?
Yeah. I guess too many. Maybe it's also it's a broad question, right? I mean, there's a lot to say about that. I think how I would like to start answering it is with accepting failure, and that failure is not what we're aimed for, but we absolutely need to accept failure, because if we don't accept failure, that's not what startups are all about, and that's not what innovation is all about. So I think step one, failure is okay. Failure, should lead to another try. In fact, how I see it a little bit is, I'm sure we've all seen in science class and beyond our model of defining a hypothesis. Testing this hypothesis, maybe doing a sprint in software terms, seeing the results, learning from the results, and then refining what my hypothesis is. And that goes for a business model, that goes for my product, that goes for many things, how to approach it. And that's absolutely fine, because each cycle I'm getting better and better. And as a startup and as an innovator, I should also do this cycle as fast as possible while I'm still learning, and each time I'm still getting better at it. And just, an anecdote also, of other companies or other people that kind of almost celebrate failure. There was a conference once called FailCon. I don't know if you've heard about it. It started in the Valley, and then they made it across the world a little bit, where they invited, in a stage similar to here, some of the top founders talking about their failures until they finally found out a business model that worked. And often you know them by their successes, but not necessarily by their failure that they had before. Or, for example, an initiative from Google called Google X, which is kind of a moonshot program of Google trying moonshots, big things, and in a similar model, trying to refine these models better, to make them better and better. But if they fail, they kind of celebrate it. They celebrate that they have learned from it, and on they go with burying the project and trying something else. So I think this is step one, accepting these failures and getting fast in our sprints and our iterations of making things better. And you want to hear more, like a long list? I think I pass on and then I'll come back. Is that okay?
Happy to hear more, but we'll go around and come back.
Yeah.
Ezequiel, what about you? In 20 years, successes and failures, how do you deal with those?
And my personal opinion is usually we fail in basic things. This is the hardest thing to manage, because sometimes we just heard or know about big failures. But basically what in my opinion, it's what makes us lose our timing to market. Our chance to achieve success is our daily, actions, small steps that we take every day. It's like, for example, I want to be more fit. I want, to have more healthy food, etc. This is like the goal, but to achieve that, it's like a lot of small steps that you need to take it. And being an entrepreneur, for me, it's like having all these small steps every single day. And it's on that repetition that usually we get lost a little bit, because you get tired, you get, involved in too much problems and stress, etc. And it's very easy for you, to lose the track that, okay, what should I do tomorrow? Because, okay, I have the vision for 10 years, whatever, but for today and tomorrow, what should I do, And usually we mess up in these small things. And we sometimes think that these small things are not that important at all, but actually they are much important than the big ones. Because this is like, creating who am I and how I go to the objective. So my opinion about failure, I really agree with you. We need to have this, failure comprehension about, okay, it's part of the process. And also I would like to say that, okay, I know that I could be, failing on something, but this is part of me every day being developed. So this is kind of a personal development. An entrepreneur is someone that is always being developed. And usually we have just the feeling for the business. But I think that what I can do, it's what my business can do, actually. So as much as I'm growing as an entrepreneur, my business also can do it even more. So I have been in a lot of acceleration programs, and usually all those acceleration programs are very focused on the business, but not on the entrepreneur, not the person behind the business. Because the business is not who am I, like it's not who I am, or, it's not me. I'm doing this today, maybe tomorrow can be another business. It's like, it's like Martin, 3 business, whatever, etc. It's like you having all this money, blah, blah, blah. But okay, you are doing this today, but in like 10 years, what you're going to do, I have been these 2 weeks in Monaco for a boot camp from the Prince Albert Foundation, and it was quite interesting to see the Ben Saunders, the guy that went to the polars, walking, etc. Awesome history, but by the end of the master class, he said, okay, it's even harder to raise a child than go to the polars, So the point is the small steps that we do every single day that usually we kind of, okay, we don't need to look to that, we need to focus on big things. My personal thing is for entrepreneurs. I don't know if we have many entrepreneurs in the room, etc. Probably yes, but my personal opinion is we need to take care of these small steps every single day, It's like counting any penny that you have, like, okay, 5 cents, 10 cents, and you need to check every single day. This kind of discipline will get you there to the objective. So if I look to my 20 years of expertise, all my failures was because I was missing these small steps. Was, okay, we need to do big things, we need to get a lot of money, we need to have some success, we need to achieve that big goal, but losing my focus on the small things every single day.
I think that's very sound advice, actually. Brilliant.
Thank you.
Look after small things and the big things will happen. Tom, what about you? Successes and failures along your journey?
Successes and failures. I started off with a big failure in my introduction with the first company I worked for. But I think in Sea Capture we have a phrase: is this an interesting problem or a boring problem? So I couldn't agree with you more around forming those habits and the discipline to just get out of bed on time, and just do the things you need to do and close the day off properly. But then you've got interesting and boring problems. An interesting problem is, really, that's a result from the prototype that I really wasn't expecting. That's a real head scratcher. We need to sit down and have a think about that. And that's a slow, interesting problem you need to, give yourself time to noodle through, not make a snap decision on. And then you've got the boring problems. My favourite boring problem is we were building our prototype during COVID. We had to buy a blower. It's like a massive fan about the size of this stage. And there's not many places in the world that buy a blower in the same way that we wanted for our prototype. And we ordered one. And it didn't arrive on time. And we thought, okay, well, maybe it's a couple of weeks late because it is COVID, and there was other things around, getting things in and out of the UK with Brexit. That wasn't very helpful either. And we finally called the guys up and said, where's our blower? So we delivered it last week on time. Where? Where did you deliver our blower? Well, to carbon capture. No, sea capture. Carbon capture, Houston, Texas. No, sea capture. Sea capture in Leeds, England. Oh. And there was a bit of red faces on the other side of the telephone. And then they dropped it off a lorry. And then it took it 3 months to get to us. And then it had to go back to the factory to get fixed. And these are boring problems that just get in the way. Could we have done much more on our side of the fence to stop a boring problem like that from happening? Maybe, but that's the law of diminishing returns. And sometimes if you lose 4 months in a program of 18 months, it's like, wow, that really hurts. And these are boring problems. Interesting and boring problems, and the decision-making process that goes with it. I think those are things you need to get on top of. That delivery excellence when you're actually trying to build a prototype, building it fast, getting the information quickly. I mean, it takes us 1.5 years to build a prototype if everything's going well, and it's £3.5 million. So the capital intensity of climate tech and clean tech is very, very different from what VCs are used to investing in terms of those software and computers. So the scale of what we're trying to do is it makes the failures a little bit more painful, and your partners need to have the right partners on board who get it.
That's really interesting about the boring and interesting problems, and devoting, I suppose, time to solving them as efficiently as possible. I'm going to go over to questions from the audience in a minute, so have a think about if you've got a question before I go to Boris. Successes and failures for you and how you've dealt with them.
Well, with an academic background, if you go up and do a PhD, you'll spend something like 5-6 years doing the actual work, and once you then write it up and you think, oh, well, you know what, if I just did all the experiments that actually mattered in the end, it'd be 5-6 months tops. So there's a lot of failure in that, and in terms of keeping things honest, which is something that was mentioned earlier, well, you have to, because it's science, right? So in that regard, scientific training is actually very, very good preparation for living in this world. In that regard. In other regards, it's actually horrible because of the fact that we're trained to be so honest and okay, here's exactly what we can do at this time. We go to investors and we say, this is what we can do. Well, a lot of investors, either by desire or by years and years of being abused that way, are used to hearing, here's what we could do with this sort of thing. And if you then give them an honest answer as to what is possible right now, they might underestimate you. We've had this time and again where we have to compete with other people for a limited pool of funding, and we are the honest ones. Like I said, our CEO has a PhD in physics, so she is very much on board with saying exactly what we can do, not what we might be able to do. And you then have to compete with people that make all these sky-high promises that say, oh, look at all what this could be doing in a few years' time. It's like, well, we're talking about what it can do right now. And cutting through all of that is actually a very, very hard one to do. Trying to get that message across that what you're saying is actually something you can put weight on. It's not an empty promise, it's not an exaggeration. It is what it is. And that is a very tricky one. And what was said earlier, it is absolutely vital, absolutely right, to talk to the right kind of people. I can't even count the number of times that we've talked to people and found out a half hour into a presentation, it's like, well, yeah, our minimum ticket size is 100 million. Like, what on earth are we even doing here? There's 5 of us. You know, this is not in any way going to be a match ever. Or you have people that jerk you around. Famous example, we had people that tell us, as long as you do this, you show us some photophysical measurements on this, and then 6 figures, easy. Oh, for a small company, that's great, 6 figures. And then they come and they say, well, you know what, put that into a film just to see that, your let's say, quantum yield doesn't drop and we'll be fine. Great. One last thing. Could you show and put that into, let's say, not just your custom-made plastic, could you put that into a commodities plastic? Because we really want to be sure that this works with something that we can buy off the shelf and just put it in there. And then every time you rush into the lab, you make this stuff happen. And for this last one, we made it happen in a week flat. We were so proud of ourselves. It was fantastic. We go back to them. Here it is. It's an EVA. This is the kind of stuff that you use as the glue that holds glass to a solar panel. You know what? No, we changed our minds. The whole honesty thing and making sure you're talking to the right people that are serious, forthright, and decent ultimately is extremely important.
Yeah, and I've actually heard from a lot of entrepreneurs that along the sales journey, or whether it's getting funding or selling to a client, actually getting a no in a reasonable time is a relief, because you get a no, you can move on. But it's the maybe, all those extra questions, all that extra work, it just takes up a lot of resource and time. Obviously the yes is the ultimate, but yeah. Are there any questions from the audience?
There's one over there.
There's one.
Oh, there's one there.
Hi, I work with young people a lot. I'm a head of careers at a school, and I have lots of our students who are thinking about entrepreneurship as a future career path. You know, it's very exciting for them. In terms of you as individuals, what personal skills and attributes do you think you have which have allowed you to be successful within the field of entrepreneurship?
I think being a dreamer is really important, and people say it a lot, but do they really mean it? There's this wonderful quote from Lawrence of Arabia, being a dreamer of the day, but being dangerous people, because they might actually live out their dreams, and it's true. I think it's so important to create imagination, and then once you've got an idea and thought about an idea, then it's the practical application. And hammer home that hideous fact that 90% of our original thought happens before we're 19 years old.
That's a really good question. Anyone else want to comment for the advice for young people?
I can see something. Thank you for the question. My personal opinion is resilience is the first thing ever. And second, I could say team management, because you never do something alone, you know. You need to work with people, and you need to manage those people to explore their full potential, etc. And this is quite a hard thing to do it, because it's not that easy, you know. It's like digging gold. It's very, very hard. People are, I mean, it's something that is very expensive to have in your monthly, you know, expenditures, I could say that. And finding good people, it's not just about money, but also it's a very hard work to finding good people, but also developing them and using their potential also to make your company grow. So even if you have tons of money, you still need people, you know. So my thing is to develop your company, you need to work with good people, but also you as a manager, you need to learn how to, you know, control all the assets and the things that you have to manage.
Two things.
I would add one more thing, and that is learn when to listen to other people and when not to listen to other people.
Exactly.
That is a very big one there. If you say a thing, if you have 5 other people in the room, you'll at least have 7 other opinions coming at you. And to understand and to be able to detect what I personally call the bullshit detector, which one of those you can safely ignore and which ones might have a grain of truth in them, or which ones might actually be profound enough to really listen. That is a life skill that is extremely important.
And I think having a team of diverse people in terms of thought, so people who think in a different way, is a really good thing. And then there's a program called Founders for Schools. I don't know if you've heard of that. Founders and then the number 4 schools, which takes founders into their local schools to inspire school children. So I can follow up on that if you like. Thank you for that question. Anyone else want to add anything on that? No. Any other questions from the audience? Oh, there is one.
Good day, everyone. My name is Fortune. I work for Parallel Carbon, where it's direct eye capture based out of Manchester. And I want to direct my question to all the founders on the panel. I'd like to know, how have you managed human capital development in your story so far, in terms of hiring people, making sure they are aligned with the vision, compensating them rightly, micromanaging them if need be? Just the whole works. How has it been in terms of managing people? Because in the startup sphere, you'd agree with me that a startup founder's life is never easy. You want to be sure that on one hand, you're pleasing your investors, you're chasing your targets, you're speaking all the technical jargon that gets the job done. On the other hand, you're trying to manage people you've brought on board who have staked, their life on your dream. You want to assure them that the lights don't go off or out tomorrow. Who want to be assured that before the next funding round, will I have a job? So how has it been managing them? Thank you.
Happy to speak to that. I think it's a great question. The people side of things of startup is so important. The first 5 people you hire really define the culture of the organization and really define what the company is. And they're the ones who kind of live and breathe it. It's very strange when you hire someone into a company and you have no career ladder because you have 1 year of funding. There's no real state of progression. It's like, this is the problem we're all working on and you have to kind of own it and work on it as well. So look for people with high agency is kind of the kind of thing that we've learned. Not someone who wants to be told what to do, but someone who will go out and find problems and really work on them as well. I think there's kind of a cliche from kind of Silicon Valley, but find someone you would call if you wanted to get out of prison. That kind of person is what you're looking for. And in terms of managing them, you almost want people who don't need to be managed. Like, you don't have the time. If you're in kind of pre-seed, seed level, you want people who, you can give them the problem, they can go and work, and you can have your Jira board or whatever set up, but they won't just stop working because you haven't given them another problem. They'll go find something else, and they'll challenge you on what things you should be doing as well, because they'll be close to it. So again, you need very particular type of people, and you have to be pretty ruthless in terms of moving people on who don't have those skills. And that was one learning for me, was the team really responded differently to how I thought they would when we moved people on. I thought they would be, gutted or devastated, but it was very much, they feel it more than you do when someone doesn't fit into the kind of culture and the attitude you have as well. So, on that side of things, people is hugely important, and you have to really filter and do your recruitment very, very well.
Anyone else?
Just adding to that, agreeing with all that, I think there were the key points also as well. So just adding, I believe that the team, in a way, is probably the number one reason for failure and for success in a startup. I've experienced that myself as well. Whenever something went wrong, it was often the team that just didn't work together. And I mean specifically the founders, or the initial, the C-suite or founders of the company. So I think is absolutely critical. And answering your question is probably even more difficult, because we heard some pointers, but I think on the other hand, there's no one size fits all. Especially in times today where there's more and more happening online than before. I mean, when I did my first couple of startups, there was really no online, it was all offline. And you were sitting all together in one room, and that then changed. So I think it's super important to get together physically and work with these people and try to get aligned, and even more important than ever before. And one other thing I just want to add, which I think is critical, especially for the first couple of hires that you have in a startup, is let them participate with shares in the company, which often seems to be obvious, I have to say, in the United States. I mean, it's standard. I haven't almost seen anything else. It doesn't seem to be often so in Europe. And I think it's super critical to have everybody participating from the beginning, and ideally participating the whole staff in the company with employee stock option plan or founder shares, depending on who it is and what it is.
Anyone else want to? So everyone having a vested interest.
Yes, exactly, with shares.
So I'll build on that. So in a startup, the only people who are going to join a startup are rampant optimists. So how do you take a bunch of rampant optimists and help them to be realistic about the world in which they're developing a product for, and be realistic about the boring problems about what it takes to get a blower not delivered to the wrong side of the world? So, I'm not a founder. I was brought in by the founder because our three founders were very technical and didn't want to deal with any of that stuff. So I'm delighted. We're all in a happy place. Creating that happiness throughout the whole team is a bit tricky, because when the chips are down and somebody's having a bad day, and that side of the company, that resilience you're talking about is hard, and these guys are having a good day. So how do you bring everybody together with a long-term view? So scCapture does have an all-employee stock option, depending on the grade you are in the company and your ability to shape the organisation. We spend a lot of time curating the culture. So if you're a team of 10 people and you hire one more person, you've changed the nature of the company by a significant amount. So we had to spend a lot of time deciding who we were. And we've got our 3 words on the wall, and that helps us in our decision-making process. So, yeah, long-term incentive programs. Short-term ones I don't think work very well, because otherwise you can get people thinking very, very short-term in terms of, claiming progress when perhaps there aren't. Not through any negative motivation, but just because they're optimists. Oh yeah, we've done it. Have you? Show me. Show me.
Brilliant. Well, I think I've been told to wrap it up. I think that was a really interesting panel. Really great insights there on successes, failures, teamwork, building a business. And thank you very much to Ezequiel, Aidan, Tom, Martin, and Boris. And thank you to the audience for listening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.